couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster that breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. Guys, if you haven't already, please just hit subscribe. I mean, it would be so cool for you to do that. It would be so awesome. It would make my day. It means all the world to me. And so I would love to end this year with some more people in the Fang Gang. All right, let's do this. So, we have done 1 and we have done 2, and now it's time for part 3 of the Underworld series. And this, as everybody knows, prequel, right? We've talked about this. So, if you've been following along, you guys already know how the war against the Lycans started because the story has been told, but now we actually get to see it on the silver screen. A lot of people think this was kind of an unnecessary one, but I was happy to get Michael Sheen and Bill Nighy back, so I was very excited for this one. I was like here for it. I think after this one, that's where I kind of fell off. So when I watched all 5 to do this series and to go on Hack the Movies, I turned on number 4 and was like, yeah, I definitely never saw this one. So I saw this, I want to say like I rented it when it came out at Blockbuster. I did not see it in theaters. The first one is the only one that I saw in theaters, but I was pretty excited. And this one has, is it Rona Mitra? Is that her name? That plays Sonia, and she looks so much like Kate Beckinsale. So it really does line up with the idea that Victor chose Celine because she reminded him of Sonia, but also we learned in the second one that another reason he turned her was because she was the only one that knew where the tomb was. So already contradictory. So we assume Victor doesn't actually care about anybody. All right, let's do this. Underworld 3, Rise of the Lycans. We get another voiceover. That's how all of them start and end. It's been 2 decades since the creation of the 2 species. Victor has created an army of vampires to stop the army of wolves, but Lucian was born. So Lucian was a born werewolf. We don't know how this happened. All we know is that Lucian was born, and he's the first of the higher Lycans. So, interesting. And we know that the 2 species are like a virus of the blood. So we don't know exactly how Lucian was made, but Lucian was made. That's all we need to know. Victor should have killed him, but he didn't. He raised him as a slave and a warrior since he was strong and faster than all the others. Since he was the first of the new breed, the ones that could control themselves and were not complete animals. So Lucian would be the start of what we know as werewolves, which is the ones that can shift back and forth, unlike the lower Lycans that just stay in lycanthropy form all the time. So, Victor is watching Lucian train when he's a teen alongside his daughter Sonia. Lucian smiles at Sonia, she smiles back. Victor would cage the boy and force him to feed on human slaves when he was shifting or overcome by thirst. And this created the human Lycan race that we know now. And then they were forced to be slaves to the vampires and the vampires' daylight protectors. And I don't know if I mentioned this later in my notes, but how they control them is by putting this like collar on them that has spikes. So as humans, they're okay, but if they were to shift into Lycan form, then they would essentially kill themselves because the spikes would penetrate their throats. Now we see a meeting of the Council of Vampires. And you guys know this if you've been watching my podcast. One of the tropes I love is when the vampires have like a council or a government. I always love that. Victor is being told that the werewolves made by William are out of control. They're killing humans. Tanis is there as part of the council. He's the record keeper, and we learn later he becomes like the vampire historian. We learn that Marcus and Amelia have taken to sleep, so we know that this is when the rotation of the elders started. So 2 decades since the creation of the two species, they start rotating. Now we see a soldier on horseback racing through the dark woods as Lycans chase to attack. So these are lower Lycans that are just like living out in the woods trying to wipe out vampires. The rider speeds to the castle where Victor and his men watch and prepare to shoot at the Lycans. Then we see a blacksmith running to fire, and he's able to accurately kill each wolf, and the rider enters the castle. So the blacksmith is Lucian. We know this because we saw the first movie. The rider is Sonia. Who is now grown, and Victor asks Lucian, did it hurt your heart to kill your own? And Lucian says, not at all, they're mindless beasts, my lord. He watches Sonia, and Victor tells him keep his eyes to the ground. Victor chastises Sonia for leaving the grounds. She's been told to stay and be a council member, and then she'll become an elder, but she's constantly disobeying and riding out. So we know she's just like Celine, which means the council doesn't respect her. We see that Lucian is burning the Lycan bodies, you know, the Lycans he killed. Then we see a bunch of Lycan slaves working to build, being beaten by vampires until Lucian stops one of them that's whipping the slaves.
Enough.
At the council meeting, a vampire named Coleman is suggesting to Victor that they should use some of the Lycans to patrol outside the walls during the days as the death dealers patrol at night. Victor doesn't think that you can trust any Lycan, but Coleman says, well, what about your pet Lycan who saved your daughter, and then points out that Sonia has missed yet another meeting. Victor says he'll think about it, and Coleman reminds him that some nobles are arriving the next night. We see more Lycan slaves being mistreated and Lucian watching disapprovingly. Then we see him lift a grate and drop down below the castle, going through some passageways under the castle. Sonia is there, and we see that they are in love, and they do what people in love do. And I will say this love scene is done very artistically, but there is a shot of like him hanging over this chasm and her on top of him, like holding him in place. It's a little bit silly. It's a little bit silly. They share some post-coital talking where she asks if he really feels nothing when he kills Lycans, and he says, yes, I feel nothing. Then he asks, if I leave, would you come with me? He explains that he's made a way to get the collar off of him so he can't be tracked. She begs him not to do it, but he says they're both children of Corvinus, but his people are slaves. So he's like, you know, both of us are descended from the same person, but your people rule and my people are slaves, and I just can't live like this anymore. He says he will leave, but he doesn't want to do it without her. Victor is talking to Tanis, who is explaining that Sonia will not see him or answer the door when he calls on her. Then he explains the nobles are on their way. Then we see a carriage with 3 people inside. Then we see Sonia getting a new sword from Lucian in his capacity as blacksmith. He begs her to send someone else, but she says, "Blacksmith, know your place. You can watch over me from the wall." And then she rides out with all the rest of the death dealers, even though Tanis reminds her that she was ordered to stay by her father. Then Tanis says to Lucian, "Careful that your eyes don't give away your secret." So Tanis knows. We see Sonia and the death dealers arrive to and surround the carriage. So we see that there are 3 nobles in the carriage, and then they are leading a line of human slaves to Victor as like gifts, I guess. Then we hear wolves howl. Lucian can hear them all and tells the vampires, "You need to send out more men," but they won't listen. So he steals a horse and rides out to them. He arrives in time to help the Lycans as the slaves look on, and one of the slaves is Reyes from the first movie. Lucian removes the collar and is able to shift, and then he stops all the lower Lycans from attacking, and they all back away because they are recognizing that Lucian is more powerful. Then Victor arrives and shoots Lucian, who then turns back human. Victor punishes him for removing his collar and tells Sonia, "You have defied me for the last time." Tanis picks up the collar as Lucian and the slaves are taken back to the castle. Lucian is whipped with a cat o' nine tails that has blades on the tips of it, as punishment for his betrayal. Victor says, "You were like a son to me." But Lucian is not buying that bullshit. Also, we are going to find out that Victor doesn't give a shit about his kids. So whether or not he actually believed that Lucian was like a son to him doesn't matter. Sonia is in her room and she can hear all of this happening. The council is telling Victor that this may stir up the others. This is a bad idea. Victor tells them that this is why they can't trust Lycans outside the walls. Lucian is thrown down into the basement jails, and then we see Reyes there, and Reyes gives him water. Victor's confronting Sonia on her begging for Lucian to not be punished. And she says it's because that he saved her, not because she cares about him, and asks if he'll be freed now that he's taken his punishment. And Victor says no, he will be imprisoned forever. Lucian has his collar back on and talks to Reyes, who's human at this time, and asks him if he is afraid of Lucian. And Reyes admits that he is. And Lucian explains he's not like the Lycans in the woods. They are beast only, but Lucian is different because he is part human, part wolf. And Reyes says, "Yeah, but they obeyed you." Sonia arrives in secret, apologizing, and Lucian says he's going to find a way to escape. And he tells her that Tanis knows, but he hasn't said anything to Victor. So he must want something, and she should go figure out what that is. The vampires are gathered in the hall as all the nobles arrive with chests of silver. Victor is not happy with the amount. So a noble named Janusz explains that the mines are overrun by wolves. His workers have all been turned. He doesn't think that they should have to give the vampires anything since Victor has not been able to wipe out the Lycans, which is what he's being paid for. In the dungeons below, the slaves are fed and start to fight over the food, which Lucian puts a stop to. And then he gives this rousing speech to all of the slaves, telling them that they need to fight back against the vampires. Sonia confronts Tanis and says, "Why haven't you told my father?" And he says, "Because Victor would kill the messenger and he wants her council seat." She says, "Fine, but I want something in return." Tanis arranges for Lucian and Sonia to have 2 minutes alone. She tells him he needs to run at sunrise because Victor plans to kill him tomorrow. She says, "I will meet you in 3 days in the clearing by the river after the sun sets," and then she leaves. All of the human slaves are taken to be turned, and Lucian is left alone. So Tanis gives him a key to his collar and says, "Be ready."
You don't understand the natural order of things. Things change. Be ready when they do.
The human slaves are being bitten by a chained Lycan to be turned and then sent back to the dungeon. Lucian tells Reyes that he is leaving at sunrise, and he tells the slaves anyone brave enough can run with him. They lure in a guard who sees Lucian's collar on the ground and opens the door, only to be killed by the now transformed Lucian. He shifts back, sets all the slaves free. They slaughter their way through the guards to break all the slaves out and run. Victor is alerted as Lucian shoves the last of the guards into the sunlight to burn. And a bunch of the slaves make it to the forest, but not all of them. Some of them are recaptured. Victor asks Tanis where is the key for the collar that was on Lucian, and he panics. And he's like, I locked it in the armory. I'm gonna go look. In the forest, the slaves who made it out are taking their collars off one by one, and Lucian explains they're gonna have to return to get the slaves who were left behind. In the armory, Tanis presents the key to the collar, so Victor thinks that Lucian maybe had managed to make one of his own, and so now Tanis is off the hook. Lucian and Reyes are planning their attack. Reyes is gonna go to all the local villages and try and recruit other Lycans. Lucian says they will meet back in 2 days, and then he goes and he finds a cave full of lower Lycans. And when he walks in, they kind of all pop up, but then they all recognize him as like a master. So they all just sort of stand there. So we can see that all of these lower Lycans will follow Lucian. Victor is in Sonia's room when she returns, and he explains that he feels betrayed by Lucian, and he's wondering what she's feeling. Then he asks her outright, did you help him escape? And she denies it. Then he bites her and sees everything in her blood, and I mean everything.
But you leave me no choice.
So he knows not only has she been helping and meeting him in secret, but they've been doing the nasty, and he is horrified. And she says, I love him, and her dad is pissed. So he leaves and he instructs the guards she does not leave her room. Lucian returns to his little band of merry men, and he's nervous because it's been 3 days, and Sonia should have arrived back and hasn't. And the men think they should not trust her, they should not go back, but he makes it clear that Sonia will not be ignored and she will not be abandoned. He is going back. The council is meeting and they are pissed about how much damage Lucian is doing to the surrounding villages. At camp, one of Sonia's friends comes and tells Lucian, Sonia's been arrested, Victor knows everything. So now he's preparing to return to the castle, and he tells Reyes his plans. Victor is waiting patiently because he knows Lucian will come back for his daughter, which he does. He sneaks his way in, kills her guards, and gets into her room. They embrace and he leads her out into the tunnels below, but Victor and his men start dropping down barrels of something flammable and then lighting them one by one. So they are now sort of forced up to the grounds to fight. Victor and Sonia sword fight as Lucian is held by guards. She gets the upper hand and asks her to call off his men, and then tells Victor, I'm pregnant. He is disgusted. Like, he is horrified. So, he then gets control of her, and then Lucian is dragged away. He tells her that he would have just killed Lucian and never told anyone about Sonia sleeping with him, but now that she's pregnant, they're both fucked. So he's like, now you're both under arrest and you're both going to the dungeon. So down in the dungeon, they speak words of love to each other. He blames himself. She makes it clear she chose this. She chose him, and she knew the costs. And then she is drug out, and Lucian is knocked out. He is pulled into a chamber, and all the council is sitting around him, and Sonia is shackled. He watches her tried, and then voted guilty, and then sentenced to death.
She is your daughter.
And Lucian begs Victor to save her, but Victor votes for death. Bam! So this is what we saw in Michael's visions in the first movie. So we're now seeing this happen. She gets chained to a post. Lucian is chained to the floor and whipped. The vampires all leave and close the doors, leaving the two alone. And then the ceiling is opened.
No, Sonia, don't. Just look at me. Keep your eyes on me. Sonia, look at me!
So it's very much like the scene from Interview with the Vampire with Claudia and Madeleine. So the ceiling is open and he's like, just look at me, just look at me. And then he says, I love you. And she says, I love you.
I love you.
And I love you.
Your face will not be here when this is all over, will it? And then the sun burns Sonia into ash while Lucian watches and screams. And Victor is outside listening to those screams. Fuck that guy. It was a tough scene to watch. I mean, the way it was all acted out.
Goodbye, my love.
And then they left Lucian there all day, chained to the floor, next to what used to be the love of his life and his unborn child. The sun sets, the moon rises, and Victor enters to look at his dead daughter and rip the medallion from around her neck. He looks at Lucian, then to his guards and says, fetch my knives. But then Lucian shifts. He snaps the chain, he grabs Sonia's medallion, and he runs. The guards shoot arrows into him, and he roars, which all of the slaves and all of the higher Lycans in the all of the slaves, which are now higher Lycans, and all of the lower Lycans in the forest all hear this. They all hear it. Lucian shifts back. He's in bad shape. All of the Lycans, all of the slaves, all run for the castle, ready to save Lucian, take out the vampires once and for all. Reyes makes it to Lucian and pulls out the bolts. It's a full-on assault on the castle. Reyes goes with some men to free all of the slaves that were trapped in cages and gives them the key to one by one take their collars off so they can all shift. Tanis is trying to save his records, and he lowers William's coffin down into a space below the castle. Victor is in full armor and has his whole army around them and says, kill the dogs. Michael Sheen, by the way, looks so fucking good in this movie. He looks phenomenal in this movie. Lucian is headed straight for Victor, and he is pissed. And Victor knows he's in trouble. So while everyone is fighting, that fucker takes off. He runs away from the fight. He runs away and leaves all his men to die. And he goes into the underground tunnels and he flees. Tanis gets all his records onto a boat and Tanis pieces out. Victor and Lucian have a good old-fashioned leather-clad vampire versus Lycan sword fight. It's very Game of Thrones. And in the midst of this, the sun rises. So Lucian starts pulling down chunks of the wall and forcing Victor to him. And then Victor gets like wrapped up in chains and then stabbed. And then he falls into the water below.
You were born. Yes, you should have. But you didn't.
Lucian emerges to see all the Lycans are victorious. Reyes says, "It is finished." Lucian curls the medallion into his palm and says, "No, it's just the beginning," which we know.
It is finished. No. This is just the beginning.
Then there's a sweeping shot out in the ocean where Victor has been saved by Tanis and he is on the ship to recover and not dead. And so this is how Victor survives all of this and shows up in the first movie, because Tanis saved him. And then Tanis gets repaid by being exiled by Victor. So now we are back to the opening shot from the first movie. We get a voiceover from Craven explaining that Victor killed Celine's whole family and saved her to be turned because she reminded him of his daughter. And then she looks into the camera and then we get credits. So, people have very mixed feelings about this one. A lot of people felt like it was unnecessary. I understand why people said that, but also, like, if you get a movie greenlit, you make the movie. I think I said this on Hack the Movies, but I'm going to say it again in case you guys didn't see that one. I really, really enjoyed this one. Let me move my papers. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I'll tell you why. First off, we got Bill Nighy and Michael Sheen back. Love them. And I am a sucker for like historical romance, and this kind of like, it hit all of the right buttons for me. So I had a really good time with it. So for me, number 2 is my favorite, and then number 3 follows it, and then number 1. I actually really enjoyed this one. It felt very romantic. It was a love story. I was there for it. I felt like the chemistry between the two of them was great. I loved seeing the origin of Lucian and Reyes' friendship. And I loved getting just like a more robust idea of this lore that we heard. So like the ideas of the vampires enslaving the Lycans and then forcing humans to be turned into higher Lycans so that they have stronger slaves. Like the whole thing just really worked for me. I really, really enjoyed it. Now, the spoiler alert for next week. It is all downhill from here, okay? It is all downhill from here. If you guys have already watched the Hack the Movies episode, you know which ones we voted on for the worst ones. He and I did not agree on which one was the worst one, but I will tell you both of our votes came after number 3. So they really could have just wrapped it after this one. And we had ideas of what the 4th one should have been, but unfortunately wasn't. But for me, I actually really enjoyed this one. I don't know, you guys let me know what you thought about the prequel. Let me know if you're enjoying, like, this is the second time that we've done a full series like this week by week. First with Subspecies and now we're doing it with Underworld. Let me know if you enjoyed this and you like to do more of this, or if you absolutely hate it and you want me to go back to just doing a different movie or TV show every week. I'm here for whatever you guys want. In the meantime, I hope you're having very happy holidays. I don't like cold weather, but I do like longer nights, so I am enjoying this time of year right now. So happy holidays to all of you. Join me next week as we talk about number 4. What was number 4? Awakening. Join me next week as we talk about Underworld 4, Awakening. And yes, the contacts and the black shirt will be back. We're keeping this for the whole series. So, I hope you're well. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.